Does The Long Night live up to its name? Let's find out now. Hey everyone, this is David Stark from Watch or Pass. Today I'm talking about The Long Night, a new horror release from Well Go USA. It's coming to theaters and digital on February 4th, 2022. So you can check it out in theaters if it's around you, or you can check it out digitally right now. It's an interesting film headlined by Scout Taylor-Compton, where she returns home to a very mysterious circumstance that happens in her childhood house and leads to a very long night, as you'd expect with a name. Now, my hot take on this movie is actually, I think you should probably pass on it. It does a lot right. Like, I love the setting. I loved Scout Taylor-Compton. And some of the themes were interesting, but overall, I don't think this had the gravity or the scares that you would expect from a horror movie with this setup. Like, this is a great setup. And then I found myself like not really being scared in the movie and not really caring much about the big themes that were happening in the movie. So I think it has a really good setup. I think the execution falls flat. So overall, I think you should pass. But hey, you know what? I'm going to tell you a little bit more about the film, some things I liked, some things I didn't like, and then go into the ending. So maybe you can check it out and let me know what you think, or check it out and see if you thought differently. Hey, you know, it's just my opinion. A lot of people have different views. So in The Long Night, like I said, you have Grace, who's played by Scout Taylor-Compton, returning to her childhood home with her boyfriend by Nolan Gerard Funk, and they arrive at this very mysterious circumstance. Like, the house is empty and they don't know why. Nothing seems to be really out of the ordinary. And then some strange occurrences start happening throughout the night, most notably being that there are like cultists that just kind of appear outside the house and just stand there staring at them. And so they got to figure out why, they got to figure out what's going on. They also have to find Grace's parents, because Grace's parents are just missing. And throughout the night, some of these things become clear. I'm going to first start with things I liked about this movie, then go into things I didn't like. And like I said, I'm going to go into the ending. So you can imagine there are spoilers in this review. If you don't want to know anything about the film, you want to go in, you know, without knowing the ending, without, you know, want to be surprised during it, then turn this off now, because this will spoil the film for you. So things I liked: the setting. I thought the setting was great, right? It's a horror movie. You're going to an isolated house in the middle of nowhere. This is the perfect setup for a horror movie. And I liked the house too. I liked the house and the setup. It has a lot of land around. It's kind of in the forest, so there's not really much around in terms of people or in terms of lights. And the house is great. It's a big farmhouse that has lots of rooms for things to happen and a lot of nooks and crannies for things to appear. So overall, I thought the setting was great. The second thing I really liked is Scout Taylor-Compton. I thought she did a really good job as Grace, as the main character. She was fun to watch. She was, you know, she had an enjoyable performance, and so her character is kind of the bulk of this movie. So it was really great to have someone who had put on such a good performance for that part. And the last thing I really liked is the music, especially in the credits. There's this awesome heavy rock soundtrack that played during the credits. I actually don't remember if it played during the movie. I don't think it did, because I think this movie had some pretty you know, atmospheric sounds, but that's about it. But during the credits, it had this amazing song that really kind of ended the movie strong. I loved that song. So things I did not like. The first is the effects. There were some good effects, but there were a lot of really bad effects. There were specifically some fire scenes that looked like they were added later. There were some scenes that that had some clearly CG effects, especially later on. There's a scene with a snake that is clearly CG. Overall, you know, I like it when horror movies use practical effects, and this felt like there was a little bit of CG after that did look unrealistic, and then that doesn't help, because then it breaks your kind of suspension of disbelief. So if you're already kind of on the edge and then you see an effect that's not really great, it really doesn't help to heighten the mood and heighten your scares. The second thing I did not love is, I guess I'll call it the sporadic story. There are some parts in this movie that just kind of jumped. You know, specifically, there's a scene early on when they visit Grace's boyfriend's parents, and they visit them up on the way up to Grace's childhood home. And it's really weird, because it's like, it's almost like they were going to do a scene and they cut it, because they're about to leave. And then the next scene, they're angry at like a rest stop, and you kind of get some hints on like maybe the parents meeting wasn't that great. But they just kind of like cut it out. And you know what? If you're not going to explore it, I think you should just cut out that scene, because it was really confusing. I was wondering, like, did I miss something? Are they going to like tell me about what happened later? And it just kind of was out there. So things like that, you know, didn't really start the movie strong for me. Didn't really help me get some really good understanding of the relationship, and also of some of the challenges that Grace and her boyfriend were going through. And it just made me kind of scratch my head right at the start of the movie. The third thing I didn't love is, I guess, kind of the lack of scares. Like, this is a horror movie that has an amazing setup. Like, this is the perfect setup for a horror movie. You've got this isolated house, you've got this mysterious circumstance, you've got cultists wearing like cool animal skulls and like in robes with fire. Like this should be the perfect setup for a scary movie. But for some reason, the scares just didn't happen. I think maybe the cultists didn't really do much. They just kind of stood there. So there wasn't much, scares from them. And then when they did finally enter the house and start to try to, I don't know, subdue Grace and her boyfriend, they were just pretty weak. Like there were multiple cultists that would come in the room and then they would just get like taken out by, Grace and her boyfriend who had no training whatsoever. So they didn't really scare me that much. And I think, often they were projected. I think there was one or two times when like the cultists would appear, but usually like there wasn't much of a jump. There wasn't much of a surprise. You kind of knew when they were coming in. And the last thing I really did not like is I'm going to call it the mysterious story. This story really tries to keep the mystery throughout, but I think this film might have been better if there were some flashbacks to Grace's past, because there is a component of Grace's past that happens in this film, and you don't really know any of that throughout. And I think that really hurt my engagement with the characters, and also any sense of gravity or kind of consequence to these characters, because all that happens right at the end. But at that point, like, I don't know, the film already felt like it had been too long, and the revelation at the end didn't really affect me because I didn't really have a good feel for these characters and what was going on with them. So I think the fact that it tried to keep everything, normally I would think that's a good aspect for a movie to have, a mysterious story without much background. But for some reason, I think that I just didn't get what this movie was trying to portray. That really hurt the overall kind of horror experience for me, and it really hurt my enjoyment of the film. Like I thought that this had a really great setup, and then just by the end, I feel like the execution didn't do it for me. So I'm gonna go into the ending again. If you don't want to know about the film, don't keep watching, because the ending will spoil the movie for you. So in the end, what happens is, after a fairly long night, at one point her boyfriend, like after like the second time the cultists show up, he's like, just get out of here. They should have done it. They should have left. They waited too long and they weren't able to leave. So after this long night, they find out that these cultists are the worshipers of some sort of serpent, and that they're trying to bring about the long night, which is, I guess, when the serpent escapes from its confinement, it will then bring about the long night. And I guess in order to do this, they need Grace. And so they start entering the house kind of two at a time to try to subdue her. But the cultists aren't the toughest characters in this film. They also seem to have like some sort of magic powers, because they can appear out of nowhere, but then they don't use their powers and just get like slaughtered by Grace and her boyfriend, which felt pretty weird because none of them have any sort of combat training. And they didn't, I think the fights were pretty quick, so it didn't have any of that like brutality that you would maybe expect from a horror film. It just was kind of over. So eventually she goes outside with his shotgun and she freezes. Like the head cultist like uses his magic to like stop her and makes her like levitate. And eventually, while Grace is levitating, her boyfriend scares the cultists away. I think he shoots at them, and they kind of break up and like start to retreat. And so Grace and her boyfriend are trying to leave, but her boyfriend got injured. I think got injured in an earlier fight. So I think he got stabbed, and so he is kind of hobbling. He's slowing them down. He tells Grace to just go to save herself and leave him. So she's reluctant, but you know what? She does it anyways. She runs away. Smart girl. Like, he was clearly slowing you down. Get out of there, save yourself, maybe get help. So she runs away, and the cultists all appear around her boyfriend, and he kind of tries to fight them back pretty weakly, and they, appear to kill him. They subdue him. They kind of go on top of him, and that's the end of that scene. And then so now Grace is running through the forest, and she starts to run into the cultists. And again, this is, I think, where I don't know, it just wasn't scary, because she would like pop it up at that, like she would run into them, and they would like be standing there. And then she'd like basically turn around and run away, and like they wouldn't pursue, they wouldn't use any of their like magic on her. She would just run away. So she runs away, and I think she has a vision here. Like she runs into some sort of like ritual setup where there's a bunch of naked cultists and there's some consummation going on. I think this is, but then we find out it's a vision, and we see Grace again, and she runs away. She arrives at some sort of like structure, and in the structure she sees her boyfriend Jack, who is tied up and beaten up. And after she arrives at the structure, I mean, clearly a trap, because her boyfriend's there tied up. She turns around, and sees other cultists there, and the main one kind of reveals herself, and it's this strange lady with like these tattoos and stuff. And after this, we find out some more backstory. So we find out that Grace is the firstborn of like this master cultist who is supposed to free the serpent, and the serpent is kind of this world-ending serpent that's supposed to bring about the long night, and so Grace is supposed to be the vehicle for that to happen. We also find out a little bit more, like the serpent is, I guess, part of this circle of life in this world. Like the serpent is supposed to destroy the world and remake it so that the cycle can continue. So pretty bad for humanity, but not that bad for Grace because she's the one that's supposed to bring this about, but pretty bad for everyone else. But the cultists believe that this will save the world, and they ask Grace if she wants to help. And I guess it has to be tonight, during this night, because this night is the vernal equinox. And so this whole ritual has to happen tonight. I feel like they probably should have gotten her earlier so that maybe they could convince her, because this is a pretty big choice for a split-second decision. But you know what? They are good with the pressure decision making. So we also find out that Grace's mother is this head cultist, this tattooed head cultist. We get a flashback to the head cultist, Unger, pregnant and surrounded by cultists. They kind of give her a C-section. This was one where like the effects didn't look that great. They like cut her side, and a bunch of like serpents came out and a baby. So yeah, I'm sure. And that baby was Grace. That was like this, serpent child that is supposed to bring about the end of the world. They give Grace some sort of like cup that appears to be filled with like blood, and she drinks it. I don't know why. It doesn't seem like this is something she wants, but maybe at this point she's kind of realized her destiny. So she drinks it, and then she starts like convulsing and vomiting up blood. And then when she kind of wakes up, she's in a trance, and she like is possessed. So then Grace, I guess, uses some sort of like, the cultists kind of swear fealty to her, and Grace then uses some sort of like power to, I think, kill the head cultist, which I guess was her mother. At least knock her out, but I think she kills her. And then she uses the power on the cultists, and they all like kind of scream and convulse. And this is where some effects were not very good. Like there were like flashes of light and whatnot, but it just didn't really have very great effects in this scene. And this whole kind of end section didn't have great effects. So and then Grace, I guess, kind of goes all banshee and like screams, and all the cultists kind of feel pain. At the end, they're all either dead or passed out. I think they're probably dead. And then Grace kind of saunters over to her boyfriend, and she grabs some sort of like horn knife. She kisses her boyfriend and then stabs him. I don't know why. Like that just seemed unnecessary. If the serpent's going to destroy the world anyways, why does she have to kill her boyfriend? And she liked her boyfriend, but her boyfriend's now dead as well. Everyone's pretty much dead. So now we see Grace leaving the house, and she is clearly a different person. She has a little more confidence, and she also uses magic to open the door. So that's another clue that she's a different person. And so now she has supernatural powers, I guess, because the serpent has awoken in her. So she leaves the house, walks outside, and kind of gets to this fence. And during this walk, there's a voiceover that said that essentially that Grace has one purpose, and that's to free their master from the prison, which is this property. So the fence is the logical edge of the property. So Grace is heading towards the fence. What's she gonna do? Her eyes are milky. She gets to the fence and she takes a step across the threshold. So I guess the serpent is free and the world is about to end. And that's the end of the movie. That's the long night. Like I said, I think it had some good ideas. It had a really great setup. I just don't think the execution was there. I found myself not really that concerned about the plight or the characters by the end of it. So ultimately, I think it's a pass. But hey, you know what? That's just my opinion. If you check it out, let me know what you think. Let me know if you agree or disagree. Let me know if there's things I missed. There were definitely things I missed. It seemed like there was a lot of kind of underlying lore in this film. So check it out if you want to, but my recommendation is to pass on. And thanks so much for watching. If you like this review, please like and subscribe to this channel. It helps me out a lot. Make sure all my new content goes straight to you. And please check out my other content. I've got other reviews, interviews, unboxing videos, and recommendations. Thank you.